Nice hit. In this project video, I compare 10 different ceramic tiles to see which one is the best at stopping rifle rounds.
I'm reaching all the way. No. That, you would have died.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. It's great to have you here today because we are going to be going over one of the most labor-intensive and data-filled projects I've ever worked on this channel, which was, simply put, comparing 10 different ceramic strike faces against each other to see their ballistic resistance. Now, if you're familiar with the DIY armor community, you've probably seen people in the past use porcelain or other types of ceramics to try to blunt a bullet, right? Just like actual ceramic armor works that you can purchase. And every time I see people do it, including myself, I'm, no stranger to it. I've used it on my channel. I've always wondered, well, which is the best? If I was going to go to the hardware store and pick up some, which one would I prefer to use? Because even molding and fabricating with stuff can be kind of difficult, but it's worth it if it can actually slow a rifle round down, right? Like the 7.62 by 39 or a 5.56. It's important to know how much it actually does as far as the heavy lifting when it comes to armor and why you should include it at all. So I came up with a standardized way of testing all this stuff, right? 3 days of shooting, 30 different tiles that were compared against each other, and boy did we learn some stuff about this. And this method is going to be used in the future against different types of plastics, different types of composites, different types of resins, organic fibers, metals, you name it. We're going to do these, over the next year or so, and sprinkled in between are going to be actual other projects that I've been working on. So if you're new here, make sure to subscribe. If we hit 10,000 subscribers, I'm going to do something really special. It's a little bit of a surprise, and I'm really excited to debut that, but I want to save it for when we have up to 10,000 subscribers. So don't worry, after this we are going to return to high density polyethylene as well. I imagine a lot of you who are familiar with this channel want to know more about that. But we have a lot to cover, guys, so let's go over what these forms are, how I came up with it, and show you guys actually the test footage and the conclusion of which tile is the best at the end. Sound good? Let's get started. Alright, so first let's go over the standardized testing protocol that I came up with. We're going to ignore the polycarbonate at the moment and just focus on the testing on the ballistic clay, both the diameter and depth. Now the reason why I'm doing it on clay is it's the NIJ standard, right? So when they test armor, they actually shoot it on a type of oil-based clay and measure the depth of impact after the bullet is stopped, the energy cone that comes out of it, and it gives a great example of how much energy is still traveling after the bullet is stopped. So I set up an 8x8 box with 4 inches deep, and I used legitimate ballistic clay for about 3/4 of an inch of it. Sadly, I didn't have enough of it to fill it up to that full 4-inch depth, so I supplemented the bottom of it with this other oil-based clay that I previously used on other ballistic tests. And it's very similar, it's just not the same. That's why it's packed in the very bottom and not on the top. Alright? Now the ballistic threat used for every test was a 123 grain 7.62 by 39 full metal jacket shot out of an SKS with a 20-inch barrel. Alright, let's go over the ceramic tile data sheet that I came up with that recorded everything from the ceramic tiles' break strength, their PEI rating, where they were manufactured on, etc., etc. Any information I thought was relevant to this study, and other interesting facts that I could find. All of this you can look up online at the various manufacturers of it, or if you purchase at Lowe's or Home Depot or something like that, they have that information on their website as well. So I took and purchased 2 of each of them. Most of them were 12 by 12 size. They were 12 by 12s, so I cut them down to 6 by 6s, right? And I took 3 different samples of each. Yeah, each different tile. And backed them all with 5/8 of an inch polycarbonate that was made up of one large piece of polycarbonate and two smaller pieces. And they all came out to being right at 5/8 of an inch. Because if you know anything about ceramic armor, ceramics by themselves can't stop the bullet. They can just deform it and allow it to be caught much easier. And you will see that just these by themselves, even with some of the failed tiles, or some of the tiles that just outright fail, 5/8 of an inch of polycarbonate cannot stop a 7.62 by 39 full metal jacket. It just simply can't. So, still with me? I know that was a lot to take in all at once. I just want to briefly mention the fact that I purchased 2 of the same ceramic tile to get my samples from, and I would take 1 from one and 2 from another, just so that way we could test consistency as well. I didn't really explain that part really well in the last one, but there was 30 different samples altogether from the 10 different types of ceramics that we purchased. But now that we have all the information filled out for each of the tile, respectively, it's time for shooting. Because, fellas, the bullet never lies. It always tells the truth. So let's see what it has to say about our little experiment. We measure the back face deformation using a caliper, resurface the clay, and shoot over and over again. Hence why it took 3 different days out at the range to actually get all of this information. So let's take a look at that. Alright, so we're out at the range today. We are shooting from the distance of 60 feet. See all the plates set up here on our little shooting bench. Down here at the end of the range, we have the ceramic tile with the polycarbonate lightly taped to the ballistic clay, and that is anchored to this backstop. So we will hopefully hit really close to the center, be able to cut it off, read the back face deformation on the clay, switch out the tile, and just do it over and over again and record this data. We also, of course, have the close-up camera. So, all right, let's get started. I had to edit all the test footage down. If I hadn't, then this video would be well over an hour long. But I made sure to show one of each of the different ceramics being tested, and I added a bit more of each of the ones that had more interesting outcomes for both pass and fail.
Cool. Actually, pretty much on. Yep.
This one actually blew them apart. There it is. I actually caught it that time. So I'm currently resurfacing this one, but what's interesting about this one, it's the same one, a little bit less depth, a little bit larger area. So as you can see here, when the plate, I mean obviously it blew the plate off because the tape wasn't on. You see little pieces of lead now, or possibly that bimetal steel, but it in fact stopped it on that back layer and got a nice little chunk of polycarbonate with the metal embedded into it. So all in all, this is good data indicating that, I mean, you would actually survive that. Last 2 shots you would have survived, so that's quite interesting.
Nice.
Ooh. So another one that fell off, but this one actually interesting. Look at that. We're getting it pretty consistently, just stopping in that middle plate of polycarbonate. Notice that with the capris. You see that? So, oh wait, no, this was the, because I'll have to look. But this one completely disintegrated. At least with the capris, there was still a little bit of clay. This stuff completely blew apart absolutely completely, but look at that. No penetration. Very little depth of impact as well. This one actually had less. That's interesting. But it looks like it pushed the whole plate in. That's real interesting. Huh. Well, I'll get to measuring and I'll let you know. So after the first day of testing, we only managed to get 4 tiles tested because it was getting far too cold, and we were noticing how easily they were to like fall apart after we shot, mainly because of the cheap plastic tape that I used. So the next day we regrouped and decided to change one variable in it, but luckily we had one of each of the tiles still available to us, so even though we did change a variable, as you'll see, it didn't affect it as much of the test. It just kept these tiles together better. Alright, so yesterday we were out testing these tiles. It got a little too cold, so we had to go home for the day. And one of the things I noticed that obviously these tiles blew apart so easily because really there's nothing holding them together but this cheap tape, right? This transparent tape. And I use that tape primarily so I can easily see and I didn't have to dig around, but seeing how easy it was for them to just blow apart, and even though I could get a good reading on the clay and on the polycarbonate once I was able to pick it up, it not holding together really made it difficult to measure how much of the ceramic was left because so much of it would just blow off, even in large chunks. So what I did was, I came out and I'm currently wrapping up every single tile that I have left with duct tape. So marking down which number, and luckily we have one of each at least. Most of them we have 2, so even though I know it's changing in a variable, you know, it's not going to add more ballistic resistance. If anything, it's just hopefully going to keep these tiles together a little bit better so we can get a more accurate reading. So I just want to show you guys that before we start shooting. Now let's get back to shooting them. Nice shot. Awesome. As you can see, much better now that we used some duct tape, kept it together. Now we can get a good reading and take this apart at home. Look at that. Perfect. Look at that. So, was able to stop the bullet, but we already knew that with these capris. And now we will measure the back face. So. Nice hit. Awesome. Yes, I'm so glad that the duct tape is working so well. Look at that back face. Excellent reading. Excellent reading. Right there's the bullet. Just plop this little piece of polycarbonate up and there it is. Right there and there, and you can see all the clay stuck in it. That's so cool. Awesome. You can take that back for me and I will get this measurement. Thank you very much. Look at that. I'm going to show you guys how to measure real quick. So, come on. Gotta take this thing out. And you gotta lay it face down. Take the caliper. Square it out. This one actually had a very low depth of impact. It's kind of hard to do with one hand, but I lay something flat. You can see the clay kind of bulges up after the shot as it compresses down into it. If I lay something real flat and narrow, like this, to measure inwards on, and of course, I measure this cross section so we see how much energy, you know, it's obvious how much energy, but so we record how big of an exit was coming off the back face and how deep it is. Depth is the worst, right? You would prefer a larger area on your chest rather than a smaller point that goes really deep. Now, if it was a really big point that also went really deep, that would be horrific too, but ideally this shows that the transfer of energy it opened up. And even compared to the last one we just tested, this is actually less deep, so that's kind of interesting. So let me get to this recording and let's continue. Now this one actually popped off the ballistic clay once it was shot. There is the impact point. Look at that. See, this is why I'm glad we switched to duct tape. You can easily see like the regions. Anyways, pick this up. Take a look at that back plate. Not bad, man. Wow. Look at that. These ones might be the best of them all. These ones right here really might be the best ceramics I've ever seen. That's insane. Look at how little of a back plate, or a back face deformation that is. Get a little bit of lead spray. This comes out, obviously you'd want a better binding agent than duct tape, but crap, none of it's like embedded into the wood or anything. That's awesome. That's really interesting. Good shot. But you see now, this is why right here, why you test on ballistic clay. Right? Look at that bullet right there. This is why you do it. Look at that impact crater. Look at that. So I just pried this back piece of polycarbonate off. Look at that depth. Man, I am so glad we're doing this, guys, because so many of them are just giving such vastly different results, you know? That's so cool. It really paints a portrait of what you should look for when you're trying to make body armor out of ceramics. I mean, look at that. That is so interesting. Great shot. Awesome. Let's take a look at this one. Yeah. It's actually not as bad on the depth as I thought it would be. All right, so we purposely did an edge strike here. Right, Larry? This was an intentional thing.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
This was an intentional edge strike. But you'll notice we have had other edge strikes where we caught the edge of a plate over here, even one up high. But this was a complete failure. These were the tiles that have been doing this where they get really, really deep, but I'm still able to pull out the hunks of lead and everything out of the clay. Here it is clearly seen that this was an absolute and total failure. It was able to make it all the way through the wood and the clay, all the way into the backstop. So, complete and utter failure. But, you know, that'll work.
An utter failure, just sort of like the shot.
Yeah. But, all right, well, let's set up and do the next one. All right? Okay. Nice shot. All right. Let's take a look.
That's a better shot.
Yeah. Hoo hoo hoo. Didn't even. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. I see light. I can't even. It's deformed the box. Oh no. Oh Lord. Yeah, see. Wow. I'm surprised at how much of that, like, dust, like, affected some of the clay on the backing when I pulled it in. So yeah, that little bullet is long gone. There's little fragments of it. I'm reaching all the way. No. That, you would have died absolutely 100%
and the guy behind you would be in trouble too.
Yeah, but same amount of polycarbonate. Same amount. You can see how much those ceramic tiles, those porcelain tiles, are actually doing this heavy lifting to blunt that force, to blunt that projectile, right? I mean, this is just continually confirming it. These next 5 plates we have all should perform exactly like this, where they're just going to catastrophically fail. And that is just so remarkable. Wah! All right. Well, I'm just marking. That's interesting. Look, though, behind the plug, right? So you get these on some of the other ones that actually were able to stop it. But the difference is there's no tiny hole that came with it. And that hole goes all the way through. You can see that blade. All the way through. Knocked her down.
Alright, so now I'm processing this mountain of different plates. I just wanted to show you guys something. First off, I shot number 10, the 10s before the 7, 8, and 9s, because once 7 and 8 both failed, I realized something about the different tiles. I kind of already knew, and that was number 10 was a porcelain and 7, 8, and 9 were not porcelain. So I moved 10 up, tested it, because by the end of it, it completely destroyed my box. Once we started getting these major pass-throughs, I mean, it was just blowing it apart and getting an honest reading much more difficult. You can see that other clay that I packed in there, a 1/4 inch, right behind the actual ballistic clay. But anyways, let's talk about how I evaluate the rest of the information on the plates now that we have the clay information. I made this little, I don't know, pattern jig that I could, after taking and cutting the tape off of it, place it on the back plate and kind of get an idea how much of the ceramic was still intact versus, you know, completely shattered, like how large certain regions were, so I could calculate how much of it is still like, you know, I did it 1 inch by 1 inch sections. So, and then I also take the polycarbonate, right? Look at this one. This one stopped right at that initial layer of polycarbonate. Isn't that insane? Stopped right at that initial layer. No plug came out of it. This was the best one. This was the best one. So I just wanted to show you guys how I came up with the rest of the information that will be on these forms. So after taking all the plates apart and reviewing all the data, this is what I have to say about it. So 3 of the 10 plates were outright failures. And they also happened to be not porcelain. The other 7 were. One of those, however, was a technical failure. And what I mean by that is I set the limit to being 30 mil backface deformation in depth being my cutoff and what I considered like too much. So that leaves 6 that were technically passes, and 5 of those hit consistently at around 20 mil backface deformation, with 1 that was consistently sub 20. Alright? And that was the Calcutta Warm White. But this is where it gets a little tricky. That one was over £1 for the 6x6 section, which averaged right around 4.5 pounds per square foot. That's a very heavy 12 by 12 section if you were going to try to make it into armor, right? Because most, you know, Sapa plates and everything are, what, 12 by 10s, generally speaking, depending on your body type. So 4.5 pounds doesn't give you a lot of wiggle room to create a safe backstop for it. And so even though it consistently stopped the bullet on like the first layer of polycarbonate, it's just, that is very heavy. So I favor these three: the Cornell Ivory, the Farmhouse White, and the Capri Classic. These were very consistent. Some of them had below 20, even though it averaged to around 20. In the Capri Classics, you know, they were like consistently at 20 with the same amount of size on the back face as well. So when you factor these things, you have to take weight and thickness into consideration as well. So what did I really learn? If you're using porcelain, you're probably going to do all right in your tests. Obviously look up those 4. But what sucks is I was really hoping that either through this testing that the PEI or the higher break strength would reveal like a better plate to choose, and I could say, oh well, make sure to select one of those. But that wasn't the case. The best rated one, the one that stopped the most like blunt force trauma and everything, it had a PEI of 3, and the break strength was right in the middle of some of these tiles. Where you look at the Capri tile, it had a break strength of 550 to 750. That's what they put, and it had a PEI of 5. Yet it didn't beat it. So you can't really say, well, you know, higher break strength, higher PEI rating. Which, by the way, the PEI rating I kind of suspected wouldn't really amount to too much, because that's just what they use to tell the abrasion resistance of the glaze that they put on these tiles. So if you're going to do something similar to this, you could of course just select the best ones that I rated, or you could, you know, make sure to stay in the range of a porcelain. Make sure it's, you know, used for the ground rather than on the wall, because those are much weaker, I found, in this. The ones that are actually registered to be like a mosaic or something on a wall. Pick the ones that are for heavy traffic. Those often have higher break strength, and consistently, one thing I can say about break strength is if it's over 300 pounds, it will give a better result. Alright? But you can also download this. So what I'm doing is now with certain projects, I'm going to compile them into a PDF form. So all these forms will be filled out with photos and writings, and it'll really get more in depth into exactly how I rated all of these and why I came to the conclusion of those 3 that I mentioned being better than the Calcutta white, warm white, because in the end of the day, it's about that weight. If you have a very light backer, you know, something much lighter than fiberglass or, you know, anything like that, then yeah, you could probably get away with using it, because it's going to add right around 4 pounds for a 12 by 10, right? Right around there. But it better be, your backer has to be much lighter if you do it that way. That's just my opinion on it. Feel free to download this. It'll be available soon, probably in a few days. If you want it sooner, I'll be having a discussion on my Discord group. Huge thank you, first off, to the guys in the Discord group. I wouldn't have been able to get this far with this project without you guys. It was inspired by them. I really love the guys on my Discord group. They even helped with some of the photos and things that I had on there. And also to my friend Larry for going out there those 3 days when it was freezing cold and shooting. Let me use his little range he has set up. Man, you're awesome. I know you guys will see him more in the future. So, but either way, now we have some solid data on what what ceramic we can utilize, and depending on the weight of the composite or plastic that I'm going to be molding, I know which one will work the best. So in the next video, we'll probably be going over high density polyethylene again, but you will see more like this, where I just take something, try to control all the variables, write it all out. Alright guys, so Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. This was a very long project for me, very time consuming. So if you could, please like and share and subscribe. Suggest things you want to see me work on and build. We're going to be gearing up in the spring, boys, to do a lot more awesome things on this channel, and I'm really excited about it. Like I said, we hit 10,000 subscribers. I'll make sure to upload something that I've been working on. Alright guys, see you in the next one. Take care.